I never thought one sentence, one cruel, careless sentence, would destroy the bond one had with the man I loved. But now, months later, I can still see the way his eyes hardened that night, and how something inside him broke forever. It happened after a silly argument, the kind of small fight most couples brush off. We were in the kitchen, dishes piled in the sink, both of us exhausted after a long day. He had forgotten to pick up the groceries I had asked for, and I was frustrated. He was equally annoyed at my sharp tone, and the tension escalated. Words flew back and forth, too sharp, too bitter. I don't even remember exactly how we got there, but I do remember the exact moment I crossed the line. "You know what, Daniel?" I snapped, my voice dripping with venom. "Maybe if you were half the man you pretend to be in every sense, you'd actually satisfy me for once." The words sliced through the room like glass. His face froze, his jaw tightening, and for a moment, he just stood there staring at me as though he couldn't believe I'd gone that low. I had mocked his manhood, not just his pride as a husband, but his very masculinity. The silence that followed was deafening. He didn't yell back. He didn't throw anything. He didn't even leave the room immediately. He just looked at me, his eyes dark, wounded, but burning with something I'd never seen before. And then slowly, he turned and walked away. At first I thought the storm would pass. Couples fight, don't they? Words slip out in anger. But the storm never passed. Something in him shifted that night. No matter how much I tried to pretend it was a moment of weakness, I couldn't undo the damage. In the days that followed, he stopped meeting my eyes. When we talked, his answers were short, flat, emotionless. He still came home, still ate dinner, still shared the same bed, but the warmth was gone. He had built a wall between us, one I couldn't climb no matter how hard I tried. At night, I would reach for him under the covers, desperate to feel his closeness, but his body would tense. Sometimes he would turn away. Other times, he'd just lie there, stiff as a stranger. The intimacy that once bound us was dead, and I had killed it with my tongue. I began to notice other changes, too. He worked later than usual. He spent more time at the gym. When friends invited us out, he went alone, claiming I looked too tired or uninterested. Slowly, he was slipping away from me, one step at a time, and I couldn't stop it. I tried to apologize. One night, tears streaming down my face, I whispered, "Daniel, I didn't mean what I said. I was angry and I crossed a line. Please forgive me." He looked at me, then really looked at me for the first time in weeks. But there was no softness in his eyes, only steel. "You don't get it," he said quietly. "You took the one thing I gave you in trust, the most vulnerable part of myself, and you turned it into a weapon. You mocked the very core of who I am as a man. You think an apology erases that?" I broke down, begging him to understand, but he simply shook his head. From that moment, I knew I hadn't just hurt him. I had humiliated him. And humiliation is not easily forgiven. The months dragged on like this. We lived together, but it was as though a gulf separated us. He became colder, more distant. I tried everything. Cooking his favorite meals, dressing up for him, writing him letters. Nothing worked. Then came the night I realized he would never look at me the same again. We were at a dinner party with close friends. People were laughing, sharing stories, sipping wine. At one point, someone joked about the way couples fight, how silly words are thrown around. All eyes turned to us, and someone asked with a laugh, "What's the worst thing you two have said to each other in a fight?" My heart froze. I prayed he wouldn't tell. I prayed he would laugh it off, change the subject. But Daniel's eyes flicked to mine, cold and sharp. Then he gave a tight smile and said, "Words cut deepest when they're meant to." He didn't elaborate, but I felt the weight of his meaning. Everyone else chuckled and moved on, but my chest tightened with shame. Later, when we got home, I asked him why he said that. His reply was calm, chilling, unforgettable. "Because I'll never forget and I'll never look at you the same again. You should know that." And with those words, I realized the finality of what I had done. I had broken something that could not be mended. Now, every time I see him sitting on the couch, scrolling his phone, or walking out the door without a goodbye, I feel the sting of my own cruelty. He used to look at me with love, desire, warmth. Now he looks at me like a stranger, and sometimes not at all. People say one mistake doesn't define a marriage, but sometimes one mistake is enough to poison it beyond repair. I thought I could wound him and heal it later with apologies. But I was wrong, because words don't vanish once spoken. They linger, they scar, and sometimes they kill the love you thought would last forever. I mocked my husband's manhood in anger, and since then, he has never looked at me the same. And deep down, I know he never will.